everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee to order. And myself and Councilmember O'Farrell both being present, we have a quorum. I'd like to put number 4 on consent to approve the draft ordinance without objection.
No objection.
And otherwise, let us start with item number 1.
Item number 1, General Services Department Information Technology Agency, LAPD and LAFD joint report relative to upgrade and replacement of the city's current vehicle management system. This matter has also been referred to the Innovation Technology and General Services Committee.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Angela Sherrick Bright, Assistant General Manager with the Department of General Services. This is Maggie Goodrich with the Police Department, and this is Ted Ross with ITA. We're coming before you with the report that has already been before ITGS. So this report is actually to talk about the upgrade of the vehicle management system. The original report that went to ITGS back in May of 2013 was a joint report with with ITA, LAPD, LAFD, and GSD. At that time, ITGS asked us to report back to them regarding the implementation plan, the cost of staffing, and also, security concerns for LAPD. We reported back to ITGS on August 26th of 2014, and in so doing, we found that we were actually short-funded. Originally, we had $3.1 million for the project. We found that we were actually $2.4 million short, so the actual project cost is $5.5 million. In order to address the funding shortfalls, we're doing budget packages in 15-16 and 16-17. In the way of background, the vehicle management system is a fleet management system that is used by GSD, LAPD, and LAFD to track equipment and also vehicles. It also has an inventory management system as part of the system. The system was actually installed in 1996. However, the system uses 1980s technology. So right now we're seeking to upgrade the system. The vendor that we're currently using is AssetWorks, and we first started with them in 1996 with a version of the system called MCMS. The system's been upgraded 4 times, and the city has not upgraded along with that. So we have something right now called a legacy system, and I'm going to let Ted Ross of ITA talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So as you may be familiar from the council perspective, we run a mainframe at the City of Los Angeles. And so without getting too techie, a mainframe eventually are those green screens. They served us quite well in the 1970s and 80s. They continue to serve us in the 90s. And of course, there's a lot of things that we want to do today with our technology that things like a mainframe system don't permit us to do. So unless you're a bank who's running very large background processes, a mainframe's likely not the direction and where you want to be. You can't run mobile apps off of it. You can't do a lot of things. And so this is one of the large mainframe applications that we've been trying to migrate off of. The city currently spends around $2.7 million a year, not including staffing, to support and run our mainframe. We've been taking a lot of steps to reduce that cost and to get us off that platform. So, of course, just simply from that perspective alone, ITA is very supportive of this project to eliminate another large mainframe application so that we can start to see substantial savings.
One of the other areas that ITGS asked us to respond to in their report back was the security concerns that were originally voiced by LAPD, and I have Maggie Goodrich to speak to that.
So originally we were looking at a solution that the vendor could actually host themselves. When we dove into the security that the vendor is able to provide, they're not set up for security for law enforcement. Essentially, they are an asset tracking system that spans across many industries, not with a law enforcement focus. And so the expense that they would have to incur and thus pass along to the city in order to meet security requirements for the LAPD was quite expensive. And so when we realized that, we went back and worked with ITA to take a look at what it would take to actually have an on-premise solution here within the city rather than go with a hosted solution. And what we found was that actually it's a significant cost savings to host it here on premise rather than to go with a hosted solution by the vendor. And Ted can speak to the positions that are being requested from that perspective for the city to be able to host it here on premise.
Certainly. So attachment 1 in the report has a detailed 3-year hosting comparison. We fully support leveraging vendor services where it makes sense, where it's cost effective and delivers a high level of quality. Unfortunately, in this situation, it just did not. So the hosting through AssetWorks was to the tune of $723,000 a year to get the level of security requirements that LAPD has. ITA, in comparison, is significantly less expensive, to over 3 years, saving of $770,000. So it's leveraging. We already support and maintain quite a few public safety applications. This would be joining the list of them, running in our P4 data center. And so it seemed to make sense, and in support of LAPD Fire, as well as working with General Services, that was the direction we proposed. The staffing required for that support involves a programmer analyst, a systems programmer, and a DBA. Unfortunately, over the previous years, we've been pooling a lot of these staff already, and we're fairly well stretched in each of those areas. And so we've gone through what we called our DBA crisis a few years ago, in which we've pooled them all together to try to manage a lot of our applications, and the same with our systems programmer and our programmer analyst. So we are in a situation now for us to take on this net new. We would need to require those positions to be able to support it.
I think it's kind of humorous whenever we call it a legacy system. It sounds more generous than it should be, because these are systems that are so old and outdated that when I first came here, I couldn't believe that we were using some of the old software and that I had only heard about many decades ago, and they're still here. So I'm glad we're moving in this direction. How long are the requested positions needed for?
So for the ITA positions, we see them as ongoing when it comes to support. So certainly the database administrator and the systems programmer. For the programmer analyst, we were open to discuss the idea of a contract programmer for a short period of time. We have difficulty because we currently maintain the legacy system, as well as we'd be supporting the implementation and the maintenance of the new system. So while we have 2 systems, it would be very difficult for us to be able to simply go on with one. But for the program analyst, there may be an opportunity for a contract programmer that we're evaluating.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just got a new phone and I can't figure out how to turn it off.
Now, if you had a mainframe in your pocket, you wouldn't have that problem.
How do I turn this damn thing off?
See that there? There you go. We could get the same phone.
Demonstrating a point that I was going to make, that I'm one of the least technical people here, so I'm relying upon your advice. How will these positions work in terms of the personnel department and getting them actually filled in a timely enough fashion to be useful?
We would, as any project, we would go ahead and start off the process working with them to fill them. I believe we have available lists for system programmer and DBA and program analyst currently.
If I may, council member, with regards to the project overall, there will be 9 positions. So in addition to the 3 that ITA will be hiring in the beginning of the project will be implemented in actually 6 phases. So GSD will be hiring 2 positions. LAPD will be hiring 2 positions, as will Fire in subsequent phases. So GSD and ITA will start with the positions to begin with.
How many phases will be adequately funded, at least in this budget year?
The phases are adequately budgeted in this budget year. That's correct, and we're doing budget packages for each subsequent year. So for next year, Fire will be doing their budget package, and then LAPD will be in the last year. Currently, there's $3.1 million in the unappropriated balance. We're proposing to use $1.7 million of that for this fiscal year, and then have the remaining funds of the $1.4 million moved over in the second year. We'll start to see a funding shortfall in the second year of about $500,000, and that should be covered by the budget package that's being completed by the fire department.
Colleagues, other questions or comments?
This came to ITGS. I've heard the report once already. So the savings are pretty clear. It's costing you $2.7 million a year, not including staffing. 5.5 over the 3 years, so the total savings, the 3-year saving is $750,000 roughly.
Yes.
So it's cost effective. You can donate the old equipment to the Smithsonian. I'm sure they would love to. They would love to see it.
Okay, so without objection, I would ask that
Councilmember,
we,
if I may, I'm sorry, I just need to make one amendment to the report. There's one correction, and that is to amend recommendation number 2 to change account 003040 contractual services to account number 001010 salaries general, and to amend attachment 5A on LAFD positions to change the position from programmer analyst 4 to a senior systems analyst 1. Thank you.
perfect. And I was going to suggest that we approve it as amended per the request of GSD, and instruct the CAO to review the recommendations and prepare all the needed technical corrections prior to this item being heard in budget. And I think you covered that as well. So without objection, that will be approved. Item number 2.
Item number 2, motion Buscaino, Weezer, relative to amending the mayor's 2014-15 proposed budget, Fund 1 Civil Engineering Associate 2 position, dedicated to processing sidewalk dining R permits citywide. This matter has also been referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Good afternoon, Mike Cantor, Deputy City Engineer with the Bureau of Engineering. The request before you it's actually one of the budget motions from last year's budget. The Bureau of Engineering, during the last fiscal year, we had, in response to a council motion and a council action, we created a pilot program for sidewalk dining for the historic core to try and look at a lower cost, more streamlined way to provide permits for sidewalk dining. And the number one recommendation in that was, of course, a position in order so that we could meet the performance metric that the new program was supposed to deliver. That was approved, and so we actually received the unfunded resolution authority. We filled the position, and then unfortunately, just through the budget process, the position was missed and it was not approved in the current budget. And so we caught it late in the budget process, which resulted in the budget motion, but it was referred to Budget and Finance Committee at the time. And so we are just now back to try and resurrect that to get that position approved so we can continue with the proposed pilot program that we want to implement.
So what are the actual duties of the position?
The position will do citywide revocable permits. So it's an entry-level civil engineer and civil engineering associate position. And so they will sit at the public counter in our central district office. And then what they will do is they will always work on all of the different revocable permits, but when a revocable permit for this new pilot program comes in, they will immediately take that to the top of their queue and work on it. We are hoping to provide a service metric on the order of a 48-hour turnaround. So if an applicant gives us everything we need to completely review and approve a permit, we want to be able to do that in 2 days. And so without the position, we'd never be able to deliver on a performance metric. We operate with a pretty good backlog on the revocable permits typically.
And how do you plan on funding it? Do the permits cover the position or close to it?
That is the plan. That our development services program is fee supported, and so we generate revenue through the issuance of our permits and services. We're front funded in the budget through general fund, and then we reimburse through our revenues throughout the year.
And through what authority is this authorized?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, how do I better describe it? Is it a resolution authority? What
yes,
other kinds of authority?
What we are asking for is a funded resolution authority position.
Okay. How soon do you think the Bureau can fill the position if it's approved?
We are constantly filling our entry-level associate positions. I mean, we've been working aggressively at that, and so we plan to be out at the universities at every opportunity. So it would be, based on, of course, the approval to fill it and the cycle that we are in, but it would be as soon as possible. I believe we are going to be recruiting, I want to say probably in the spring again. And if there are eligible candidates on the list currently, we would use that.
Oh, very good. Questions, comments, anybody?
I'll go after Philip.
Yeah, so this is the work product. Correct me if I'm mistaken here, but there were a bunch of students, planners from UCLA that helped sort of draft this pilot program. Am I thinking of the same one? This is the B-permit dining deal?
I'm not aware of us using, external help. The concept of this, it's possible that the staff in my central district office were involved with others.
Yeah, I want to say that they came into council. Mr. Weezer was really sort of moving this in committee, and I guess they had forgotten the piece about sort of funding this authority. I just wanted to say, go Bruins. And,
Yeah.
and
I'll go for that.
Would second the motion.
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mike, you mentioned a backlog. Can you describe
Sure.
that and how many positions ultimately will it take to be filled, and could we kind of move in that direction? Because especially if it's self-sustaining and cost neutral, we want to help our businesses. So what kind of backlog are we looking at? This one position is good, but we probably need lots more.
Well, I think that just in general, the development services program hasn't quite come back to match the demand for services. When the economy was down, we were reducing staffing. It balanced out.
Right, the demand.
But
lessens
now
at the same time.
since about 2011, our just like building and safety, our programs are seeing growth every year since about 2010-11, and so we're a little behind in terms of the staffing resources we need to provide a reasonable amount of service.
In this pilot program you mentioned, so it is basically on hold until you can get this position filled anyway. Is that my understanding?
Yes, the way we view it is the whole purpose of the program is to be able to provide a permit quickly. And if we can't, because right now we don't take, it's first come, first serve. And as you asked, the queue for revocable permits can be 4 to 8 weeks, just depending on the district office, the complexity of the permit. And so we just take them in the order they're received. Except for this pilot program, we want to take them immediately.
Right.
And that's where we can do that by having this sort of the dedicated person to do that work. And that's why we don't want to implement the program without the position.
So I would suggest that we approve this and get it going, and then you come back on a regular basis so we can approve more as the economy, so we can help move things along.
Just one,
Oh, go ahead. Whatever you have to add.
asking, just to clarify, that it appears that the amount of salary in the motion is a full year's funding, but based on where we are right now in the fiscal year and what you said, it's likely that at the most you'd need 6 months funding.
I think if you think about, it's going to take a few weeks before you would even, I'm assuming we have a list, right, and we are going to immediately be allowed to proceed with filling it, we would only need the amount of funding,
Right, so you might want
That's
to
necessary.
amend the motion to reflect that it be.
Yeah, why don't we make that
funding.
6-month funding? That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, do you think the revenue matches the resources for this year, or do you need more funding than the offsetting revenue that will come in this year?
I think if you look at the entire Bureau's development services program, all of the permits and services, I think we're good. There are services that are lower cost recovery than others. I believe that revocable permits have always traditionally been a little bit under in terms of full cost recovery. But when you balance everything out, we are usually, once again, I know David Hirano is here, and we always have our philosophical discussions about cost recovery. But I've always felt, based on the Cantor math, as I call it, that we're 100% cost recovery.
So as long as you're here, what are your thoughts on that subject?
And David Hirano with the Office of CAO. Councilmember, I think what's important here for you is the prioritization that you are providing the department. If you were to approve this position, you'd be saying a very clear message to the city engineer that this is a priority for you. And what's more important than whether this is actually covered by the revenue is the service level that you would be achieving through the implementation of this position. Because right now, the service level is several weeks. They're looking for a service level that would be in the range of a couple days. As the permits are currently processed, the revenue is earned, the time is spent by city staff. So there really isn't any additional revenue coming in the door. It's really all about what the service level is that you want and what priority do you want to establish this particular service as. So if you provide this position, it sends a very clear message to the Bureau, make this a priority and achieve that service level that Mike has so clearly stated. If you don't, it clearly tells the Bureau that this isn't as high a priority for you and that the current service level is sufficient.
Yeah, I think certainly from my perspective, the current service level isn't sufficient, but if we could really have 48-hour turnaround, I think that's as good as other cities, if not better, on that particular arena, and I think it sends a very positive message. So if there are no other comments, questions, move the item without objection.
Mr. Chair, just for clarification, if I understand correctly, this provides for a full year's worth of salary. Are we requesting a six months worth of salary?
No, we amended that motion to be a 6-month period.
Okay. Very good.
Item number 3.
Item number 3, CAO report relative to the status of employment pursuant to the 2014-15 adopted budget.
Good afternoon. I'm Maria Gutierrez with the City Administrative Officer, and with me is Jennifer Lopez, who's also with the City Administrative Officer in charge of position control. Before you is a report regarding the status of employment. This information has historically been included in the city's financial status report pursuant to the actions on the adopted budget this fiscal year. The information is now being transmitted to this committee concurrently. Before you is the city employment level as of the end of August for both civilian and sworn classes, as well as the status of 120-day employees that have been approved as of the end of August. Regarding our employment level report, employment authority from all funding sources totaled 33,793 at the end of August. This includes 30,054 filled positions and 3,696 vacant positions. Regarding 120-day employees, through the end of August, a total of 258 appointments have been authorized. However, this number does not necessarily represent the actual number of 120-day employees that have actually come on payroll. We're available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. As far as the 120-day appointments, if 258 authorities have been authorized, how come not all of them are being utilized? Are there some departments that are just holding on to their 120-day appointment authorities?
Some of these positions, such as in the case of the controller's accounting resource pool, some departments get approval for a large block of people, and departments, for example, in the case of the controller, there have been scarce accounting resources. So the controller manages this pool of people, and as the departments have a need, they will request staff from the controller's office who manages this list. And so they will then disseminate people to the various departments. But the need will vary throughout the year, so they will go and seek approval of a larger number of people, but not all are guaranteed to come on board throughout the year. It depends on the need. A similar case occurs with the library. It's based on need throughout the year.
Now, according to Attachment 2, in August 2014, 47 positions have either been vacated or filled. For an example, 5 positions have been filled over the 250 already filled in planning, but 21 positions have been vacated on the civilian side of the police department. Do we know why that is?
I'm not sure if the department is here to answer those specific questions. I don't believe I see anyone there. We could provide this information at a later time if you would like. I think that's a question that the department can address.
Yeah, and if we're going to ask them to come back with that information, why don't we also ask them for information on the number of vacant positions on the civilian side and the LAPD? The number I have is around 650 vacant positions. So I'd like to know what those positions are and why they remain vacant.
If I may, Councilmember, just for informational purposes only, in the past few years, actually, PD has actually carried a significant number of vacancies within their civilian authorities. So this has been pretty constant for them for the last few years. So I'm not sure if there's anything significant that has changed from year to year. It's basically something standard for them that they've had. I'm not quite sure why they have that many vacancies, but it seems to be constant for them.
We could ask them to report back on why the number of vacancies on the civilian side, and if we could have a general report back from the major departments on their vacancies, that would be appreciated as well. Mr. O'Farrell?
No comment, thank you.
Okay, so if there are no further comments, let's continue this item and ask for the requested report backs in 30 days. And item number 5.
Item number 5, CAO report relative to memorandum of understanding for the use of hiring hall for the temporary use of Operating Engineers Bargaining Unit represented by the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 501, MOU 62.
Do we have a staff report? Any staff here to answer questions on this item?
If you do have questions, and also Gavin Kuhn is here representing the union, I can answer for the CAO.
We don't have anyone here from the CAO's office.
Well, other than me, sorry.
Well, I don't know if you'll have the answer to these questions.
Might not, Gavin might. Why don't you join us at the table
We'll give
here?
it a shot.
Yeah.
How can the city be assured that the yearly increases in healthcare premiums won't increase more than 8%?
We put that as a safety net to protect the city from any kind of rapid inflation on that number. The 501 health plan typically runs about 3% a year increases historically. It's up and down, some years a little more, some years a little less, that's the average. But we have not had an issue in the past since we've had this contract since 2007, but in negotiating with Paula Days, we felt that to protect the city, we should put some kind of cap on there to ensure that we didn't have runaway inflation on that number. And there is language to protect both parties that we can mutually agree to sit down and discuss if there's a problem.
Very good.
My apologies, Paula could not be here. She had a pre-planned vacation this week, so.
I negotiated the contract with her, so I was right in the middle of it. So
that sounds reasonable, what Gavin's saying, so.
So what pension fund will the city and the employees be paying into?
It's the Operating Engineers Local 501 Security Trust Fund. It's the same trust fund that we're paying since 2007. let me give you a real quick history on this. This is we already have a hiring hall agreement, MOU. There are some problems historically with that original agreement, so we agreed to sit down and rectify those issues. It's the same pension plan, same health plan, but the previous agreement was, for lack of a better word, was things were frozen. There was not a mechanism, an escalator built in for wages and things like that, so it just was part of the problem. Otherwise, we would be renegotiating this contract every few years. The theory was we want to get this so we don't have to come back to the table. And the second issue, it was originally intended for short-term employment, but we've got guys that have now been over 5 years. Because of the financial issue with the city and stuff, there became more of a reliance on the use of temporary employees, and so we needed to fix that adjustment. We put in a vacation, what we call vacation something mechanism. We call it longevity pay, trying to be creative, trying to find a word for it, because there was no allowance for these people to have any time off. After 5 years, you never got a sick day, a vacation day, or anything. So we put in a longevity arrangement to cover that.
And I think the city is contributing 40 cents an hour to go into a trust fund. Does that go into apprenticeship and training, do you know?
Exactly. We run a very, very strong training program to keep our current workers up to speed, and also the opportunities for them for promotional if they wish to improve their skills and become a chief or something in our world, and to keep skills current because technology changes.
Do you know how we access that money? How it actually, what the process is?
Well, the funds go to the training trust, not the local itself. We have a separate entity, not the local. It's its own trust, its own set of management and union representatives that run that trust, and their job is to create all these training opportunities, both the apprenticeship program, which is separate, which I'm trying, by the way, get into the city to join. We're in negotiations on that. And the second part is to give as much training opportunities to our workers as possible. And because better trained workforce is better for everybody.
Very good. Mr. O'Farrell, any questions?
For my own education, what are there restrictions that the state imposes in relation to the apprenticeship programs?
Yes. Actually, it's not really restrictions. They've set a set of standards that we're required to run. So we have a 4-year apprenticeship program, and when you graduate, you'll have all your licenses, everything. You're fully qualified to function as a full journeyman operating engineer in pretty much any capacity. You can run a cogen, you can run a boiler operation, you can run pretty much anything. So it's a pretty intense program. It's highly respected. We run about 120 people through that program, about 30 people a year, 30 to 40 graduate a year. It rotates. And it's a great program, and you have a career for life, which is wonderful.
Sounds great.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you, Gavin, for being here.
And I just got to give
appreciate you being able to fill us in on all that stuff.
I don't normally compliment my counterpart on the other side of the arm wrestling all the time, but Paula Days, we had a very good negotiation. I have to compliment her on listening to our problems and trying to find a resolution. It worked out, to me, one of those wonderful kind of situations with sound, and it clicks and you solve the problems and it works. So I just want to send my appreciation for her hard work on it.
Well, thank you, and
Thank you for that.
we will move this item without objection.
I will share that with Paula.
And there being no other items on the agenda, we are adjourned.